Okay, so this is our next video in the series on the intro to course themes and regions. So here we're going to be talking about the political theme, and we're going to be looking at the political theme in Persia, which is going to be our stand-in for the Middle East, or probably more correctly, Southwest Asia. So in this video, we're going to be looking at what the political theme is. In the next video that is associated with this, we'll look at how Persia used political things to maintain order. So first, let's talk about what we're going to see in the political theme. So the political theme is looking at things like government, war, taxation, treaties, alliances, things of that nature. But really, what the political theme is about is the use of power. Now, generally speaking, what power is the ability to get someone to do something they would not ordinarily do. So to do something they would not ordinarily do. Power can be legitimate or illegitimate. So let's look at these two different types of political power. So legitimate power. Now, the thing about these two types of political power is that the difference is seen in the people being ruled. So legitimate power is when the people being ruled accept the leader as rightful. Like they understand that the person who is in charge should be in charge. So this is really a case of they should be there. They should be in charge. That's what legitimate power is all about. Now, early on, legitimate power takes the form of a connection to religion. So most of the legitimate rulers in the ancient period saw themselves as connected to religion. And there are a number of ways that you could be connected to religion such that the people will follow you. So you might call yourself a god. You might be the offspring of the gods. You might be related to gods. Or maybe the gods just approve of you. But in one way, shape, or form, the god, the gods want you to be in power. And if a god says you should be in power, then you should be in power. So really, the people accept the rulers because God or gods accept the rulers. And there are a number of different ways that we see this throughout the ancient world. So, for example, in Egypt, the rulers were considered to be gods. But if we think about rulers in the Western Hemisphere, they were only related to the gods. And if we look at China, these people were merely approved by gods, or more correctly, approved by heaven. And when these rulers ask you to do something hard or dangerous, you do it because it's like God is asking you to do it. So, for example, when Egyptian pharaohs asked the people of Egypt to build the pyramids, they did it happily because a god told them to do it. So this is about the people accepting the leader because they are usually connected to religion. And so when we get these giant public works projects, like a pyramid or other kind of lesser public works projects, things like town walls, irrigation systems, roads, all of that stuff, people happily do it because a god has asked them to do it. Now, of course, the people are paid, sometimes with money, sometimes with food, but they generally accept this work. And they don't complain. Why would you complain? A god asked you to do it. And even if you did want to complain, you don't complain about a god because a god will smite you. So you just kind of let them do what they want. Now, the other type of legitimate, or the other type of political power is illegitimate. Illegitimate power is the opposite of legitimate power. Illegitimate power is when the people being ruled do not accept the leader as rightful. So this is a case of the leader shouldn't be in charge. So examples of illegitimate power are, bullies, criminals, malevolent dictators. These are people that have power but shouldn't have power. The people they have power over don't want them to have power, but they have achieved power somehow. So these people typically rule through force. These people typically rule through force, essentially saying, if you oppose me, we'll kill you. And that's essentially how these kinds of leaders rule. The best example of these kinds of leaders might be seen in Mesopotamia. In very ancient Mesopotamia, we see the very first empire. An empire is a government that rules over many different types of peoples. I think the best way to describe this is to kind of think of this like a zoo. Like you've got the different kinds of animals in a zoo. So you have like monkeys, and you've got zebras, and you've got elephants. And they all have their own leader. So there's a leader of the monkeys, there's a leader of the zebras, there's a leader of the elephants. But let's say that there is a penguin. I don't know, I'm just guessing. I'm just coming up with an animal at random. So let's say one of the penguins manages to conquer the monkeys, the zebras, and the elephants. And so now you've got Emperor Penguin. That's funny because there are Emperor Penguins. So Emperor Penguin. Now the penguins love the fact that there's Emperor Penguin. The monkeys do not like Emperor Penguin. The zebras don't like Emperor Penguin. The elephants don't like Emperor Penguin. So they very well may rebel against Emperor Penguin. So what the penguins have to do is they have to use force Force is used to stop rebellions. So let's say the zebras try to rebel, the penguins would use force to stop the zebra rebellion. And yes, I know it sounds silly, but I think it's the best way to kind of describe what we're talking about here. So the best example of an emperor like this is the very first emperor. His name was Sargon of Akkad. Sargon of Akkad. And what Sargon did was he had a small empire where he controlled a bunch of different other peoples, and he had to constantly put down rebellions within his small empire. So he had the empire, and he managed to hold on to it, but he was constantly fighting rebellions over and over and over again until he finally died. So the trick here is to build an empire if you want one, but have an empire that doesn't constantly have to be squashed. Sargon's empire had to constantly be quelled. There were rebellions all the time. So the trick here is to somehow create an empire, create a big piece of political territory that looks like this, but is ruled like this. So is ruled legitimately. So what we're going to turn to in the next video is the people that actually figured out how to do that, and that's the Persians. So in our next video, we'll look at how the Persians managed to create a big empire and keep everybody happy. So until then, this is Mr. Nissen signing off.